The problems facing New Zealand's primary sector have been mounting at a rapid pace. So I think it's time for open hearts and open minds. Well, welcome to Sarah's Country for another week of takeaways. Take away from the fridge, put it in the oven and away to the table, because that's all we'll be doing for another week. But hey, look, to our international fan base of Sarah's Country, we need to update you. Today in New Zealand, we're going to stay at alert level 4 until at least next Tuesday. Yeah, it's not that long in the scheme of things, with Monday being, of course, a public holiday, with Anzac Day, and which overseas is Remembrance Day, I believe. However, Alert Level 3 does great things to bring back to life our essential processing, manufacturing, construction, of course, but not retail and hospitality. So that's just around the corner. We can put a little bit more wood on the fire to get this economy turned around. It's been really a game of two halves, with a divided opinion on the public health crisis of a wrecked economy, with soaring welfare, but of course being the champion of the world's most strictest COVID lockdown. Of course, after today's announcement, we've decided to make the poll on Farmers Weekly's Facebook page. Do you think the government is taking the right approach, balancing both a public health crisis and, of course, our economy? We've got over here, I think, this interview is saying, yes, they are doing a good job of balancing the health crisis and the economy, but we'll keep checking in on the poll throughout tonight's show. Do you know, though, what I think is a public health crisis? Locking people in their houses with things like hot cross buns and just colder days. You know, being thrown out of whack without the routine of many people's rugby and netball training. Or for some of you watching, like I can see here, Mr. Cam Higgy, you know, you'll be missing your Zumba with Enrique in the mornings, followed by, of course, your private Pilates with Cassandra. I know you love at 9. And then bench pressing with your old mate Tyrone, you know, after work. But I think that there is some people out there that are really starting to blow to bits. And I got sent in this great photo of a family member of mine who's really sort of packed on the pies over quarantine. It's not really his fault, because he was told to go to his cave and not come out until he was ready. That's a throwback to the archives of my cuzzy Shrek from Bendigo Station with his mini coats on in winter, or too many hot cross buns, you tell me. Talking about food, tomorrow in a non-glamorous affair, unfortunately, is the annual Outstanding New Zealand Food Awards. Launching on their Facebook page, the winners at 10 o'clock. And for magazine readers like myself who love a Life and Leisure magazine, they will be more than familiar with the Outstanding New Zealand Food Awards. It's a fabulous celebration of New Zealand's finest artisan food producers, and I want to say congratulations to all of the finalists, and of course we're going to have the winner here on Sarah's Country tomorrow night. Joel, you actually, I'm quite jealous of you. You know, you're inner city living. You live right across the Avon River from a pretty special part of New Zealand's small artisan producers. If those who haven't been to Christchurch for some time, there's this fabulous place called the Riverside Market, and Joel gets to live right across the road. What are some of those awesome things you've learnt maybe about New Zealand food, having that on your doorstep?
I mean, it's mostly about pies. It's just everyone loves a good pie here, and they're fantastic, so I don't blame you.
But we do pies a bit differently, don't we? Like, quite gourmet.
Yeah, I mean, gourmet. Also, the fact that they're in every single, like, everywhere you stop in the car, there is the possibility of getting the pie, which is fantastic.
Oh, absolutely. And of course, there is a lot more to Riverside Market than pies. I've got to say that my absolute New Zealand food here, and people probably already know this, is Lewis Road Creamery. It's not so much the milk, it's the butter. And I'm really trying to quota that in my house, because the old hot cross buns do destroy a good block of butter. In the comments below, I want to know, what bad habits have you picked up, or tag somebody from your household that has picked some up. Mine, of course, is sneaky little hot cross bun in the morning for breakfast. Got to knock that on the head. Is sleeping in a little longer, or is it just making too much baking you don't really need, or as I know my mum would do with us, say you're homeschooling the kids, but just put it down to life learning when they're running around outside. Okay, time for what's coming up on Sarah's Country tonight. I have a slight change around from those who might have seen the advertised order. Now, if you're new to the show, remember you can drop your questions for our guests in the comments under the live feed on Facebook or on farmersweekly.co.nz/Sarah's Country, and we will do our absolute best to get to your questions throughout the show. At 7:20, we head to the Hawke's Bay to catch up with an old mate of mine, Mike Petersen, who has moved into a great role, I think, for him, playing whip for the Food and Fibre Leaders Forum to kick them all together on trying to reach a consensus on freshwater reforms with government, despite, of course, lockdown. I'll have a yarn to Mike too, I think, about our trading partners getting a wee bit protective over their patch with buy local campaigns, and what does that mean for New Zealand? Front page of today's Farmers Weekly was industry leader Ian Proudfoot clearly stating we need to adapt quickly post-COVID-19. And we discuss how we are placed after lockdown with changes in consumer behaviour. All that after 7:30. And at the end of the show, after 7:40, we're joined by Ag Staff's Managing Director Matt Jones on the oodles of jobs there is in the primary sector with rising unemployment, but it's just not that simple to fill. First up, though, after this great on-farm story from Global HQ about Wayne Langford, YOLO farmer, he's actually going to be on Sarah's Country tomorrow, so really looking forward to playing you that. We are going to have on the show National Party spokesman for finance, Paul Goldsmith, who's been involved in following the government's recovery plans after COVID very closely. This is Sarah's Country.
It's really easy to say, hey, we're getting better at talking about mental health, and we are. But the truth is, when you're in that place and you're that vulnerable, it's bloody scary to reach out to someone and say, hey, I'm not all right. If you can make that first step, just that one conversation, the relief and the feeling you'll feel after that is gold. Just reach out, that's the key. I'm Wayne Langford, dairy and YOLO farmer, farming with my wife and kids here in Takaka, Golden Bay. My wife and I brought the farm 4 years ago. The Langford family's been farming in Golden Bay for 6 generations. We milk 250 cows on 93 hectares. We have loads of sunny days, but we also get 2.5 metres of rainfall. Unless it's 100 mils, it's a sun shower in this part of the world, so yeah. YOLO farmer stands for you only live once, which couldn't be more true, really. And it came about after I'd had a few mental health issues of my own. For 9 months or a year, I'd slipped into a place that was, quite dark and quite lonely. My life revolved around milking the cows and spending a lot of time in bed. And I remember then, if I didn't get out of bed, it was going to get a hell of a lot worse. So it just happened to be on my 34th birthday, I jumped out of bed that day and grabbed the kids and jumped in the car and said, hey, we're going to the beach for the day. And on the way home, I said to the kids, hey, we're going to do something every day to say that we've lived for that day. And just as I'd said that, one of the boys in the back yelled out, YOLO. And that was it. That was the start of the journey and start of the YOLO farmer. From there, we just haven't stopped. When we first started, every day we posted it in social media, and it was just really to hold ourselves accountable. We got numerous messages, at least 4 or 5 times a week, with other people sharing their stories about what they'd been through and thanking us for being so open and sharing our stories. The original aim was to get myself out of a really dark place. And I thought it would be quite a selfish journey, bucket list items. It soon became so much more than that. It was the little things in life that really brought us that zing every day, and we've loved every minute of it. We have to really look as an industry about what we're doing, particularly as young farming men. We think we're quite bulletproof, but the unknown pressures start to stack up on top of your shoulders until eventually the weight gets too much and we break our farmers. If we can catch them before we break them and help them through that process and then let them fly from there, we're going to be in a hell of a lot of better place.
Fantastic video there of Wayne Langford and his family based in Golden Bay, and under the title YOLO Farmer, that he has proudly built that brand around being obviously grateful for every day above ground. Colin Granger Allen has commented saying that he's drinking a lot more tea since lockdown. I could imagine trying to keep that belly warm on there as the things get a bit colder around the place. Now, last week's Epidemic Response Committee meeting on the economy and trade, chaired by Simon Bridges, brought members from the New Zealand Trade and Enterprise, Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade, trade negotiators, and of course politicians from across the House to hear plans for economic development for New Zealand post-COVID-19. To be honest, watching it, Phil Twyford, our Economic Development Minister, didn't really sort of set my world on fire, and I didn't really believe that he knew what was really going on in terms of trade in our economy. You know, that's his portfolio. So I wanted to actually bring your thoughts from across the House to Finance Spokesman for National Party, Paul Goldsmith, who joins us now. And I'd like your comments on the live video feed, of course, of your questions that I can put as well to Paul. Good evening, Paul. Firstly, what do you make of another week for New Zealand at level 4 and the hamstring on the economy of the conditions that are quite strict under level 3, of course, for small business?
Oh, look, I'm very disappointed, and I think many New Zealanders are disappointed. The reality is that Australia and New Zealand, both isolated countries with small populations, sparse population, have been able to do pretty well in getting the COVID-19 under control, and have had very similar health outcomes. But the Australians, of course, have shut down far less of their economy. They've carried on doing construction. A lot of retail and a whole lot of stuff has continued to happen that's been locked down here in New Zealand. And so, I think we should be following the Australian pattern, but instead we're hanging on another week before going into level 3, which in itself is pretty tough as well. So I think we really are dragging it much longer than we needed to, primarily because the government hasn't done its work on testing and tracing.
Okay, so I want to first mention Chris Finney, one of New Zealand's most experienced trade negotiators, comments. He had the opening address there in that committee meeting. He said trade won't save us, but it will lessen the blow. How important is re-establishing local value-added manufacturing?
Oh, well, it's critical. We're going to have had a real impact on the tourism sector for a long time, and so that's one of our biggest export dollar earners. And so the rest of the export sector, our primary services, primary sector areas, and the value-added side of that, our manufacturing, all critical to get up and running as fast as we can. And you've got to remember we're in a competitive world as well. If we're not back in global markets, our competitors will be, and so we've got to move fast. There's no time to muck around. Every day makes a big difference. That's why I think government needs to be agile and fast and moving as quickly as we can.
Yeah, actually, I want to talk about Shane Jones's call to ban log exports, 17,000 jobs and $2 billion of local economy that we're missing out, not to mention, as you just said, that there's other countries around the world that are looking to flat out fill our space globally. Yeah.
So, I think that was just one of the typical rambles from Shane Jones and David Parker, I think, squashed that idea. But look, any successful economy does lots of things, and we can't close off any more areas than have already been closed off, such as tourism. We need to be as open and as encouraging of enterprise as we possibly can in order to make a living. Just remembering, of course, that there's huge well-being consequences for not having jobs and for seeing your livelihoods destroyed. And we need to be paying much more attention to that.
Yeah, on that, we're speaking to Mike Petersen up next on Sarah's Country, Paul. And one thing I want your thoughts on that he's heavily involved in is, of course, reforms. Do you think our trade minister understands the economic impact of his RMA and environment reforms as being the environment minister on what the wider group that was in that committee meeting all wanted to celebrate the prize pony of the food and beverage industry?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the reality is that the primary sector has come to New Zealand's rescue again, and we rely on that incredibly successful and globally competitive sector. I just want to reiterate, I'm a townie, but my mother's family are all cockies from the Waikato, and I certainly know and appreciate the enormous effort made throughout the countryside to bring us the export dollars that we need, and that should be valued. And I think the important thing for this government is to recognise that they were very much in the mindset for the first 2 years of just adding cost to business, and the primary sector and everybody just pile it on for whatever reason, just thinking that somehow everybody will cope. They do need to rethink that now, and as a minimum, just put things off for a year or two to give people a chance to take stock, rebuild, and get the economy back together. Just can't keep on piling on more regulation and costs right now. In fact, quite the reverse.
Yeah, well, over the weekend in my circles, we sort of sit there and try and predict the world, as you do, Paul, and there is a real sense of fear out there in our sector that the government are going to be looking with quite beady eyes at anything that actually makes any money through taxes, and of course capital gains tax potentially being back on the table, let alone, as we were saying, the prize exports that we're going to rely on so heavily. So, as we're going into an election campaign, and yourself as spokesman for and potential finance minister, how do we capture the revenue that we need for our government books to repay this debt, yet at the same time don't cripple the hand that feeds us?
Yeah, well, the good news is that over a number of decades now, New Zealand successive governments have been reasonably disciplined around debt. We certainly spent up big during the global financial crisis and to get Canterbury back on track, but then we've already sort of brought that debt down. So, I think we can manage. The critical thing is to get the economy back growing and being productive, and asking that basic question: well, what do we need to do to ensure that New Zealand comes out winning in the post-COVID global world? And fundamentally, that's about being competitive, internationally competitive, and first and foremost, it's about private sector investment and creating an environment where people feel confident to invest, take on new jobs, new risks, start new ventures, come up with new things to export. It's all about private sector decisions. It's not some committee of bureaucrats or officials in Wellington aren't going to decide what's going to be the successful things for the New Zealand economy over the next couple of years. It's individuals making those decisions. But the government can usefully invest in good quality infrastructure and in things that make it easier for our productive sector to be productive, which is helping them move stuff around, having access to great skills, and workers, and good technology. And I think most people recognise what an incredible thing the previous national government did in terms of the ultra-fast broadband around the country, which has made our lives a lot more bearable in lockdown than they otherwise would have been.
Yeah, so I've just going to close here, though, the interaction from the audience. Michael Ross, I hope, Michael, that there was some form of ideas there that Paul was suggesting. But Michael wants to really know when are we going to find out about some actual factual campaigning from National as opposed to just political ideology from National about this recovery and keeping the government to account?
Well, look, we'll be outlining our plans. I mean, obviously, it's a very fast-moving situation, but if you can look at it in three sort of phases. First one, got to get out of lockdown as fast as we can. and that means doing the stuff that we need to do around tracing and testing, and being focused on that. Second, once we're out of lockdown, there will be a need for some sort of stimulus to get the economy moving again, and instinctively we'd be looking at trying to reduce the tax burden for a short period of time to get people back and moving. Then that third term is about doing what we need to do to grow the economy more rapidly. And we've already outlined, and will continue to outline, our firm belief in regulatory restraint and not piling on costs and difficulties. We also need to continue to invest in infrastructure. And the difference between us and the current government is that rather than just talking about infrastructure and announcing infrastructure, we actually did the infrastructure. And anybody who lives in the Waikato will see the roads that we built and the Waterview Tunnel and many other things. And then there's plenty of other things that we can talk about, and they'll be in great detail if we get a chance to get Parliament back, which would be nice, so that we can actually have some of the basics of democracy functioning.
I actually thought, lastly, before you go, how, with select committees obviously sitting, but cabinet and not so much, how much can get passed through quite quickly without us knowing over this time, with a very small handful of people actually running this country?
Well, look, I mean, they can't pass laws without Parliament, and so that'll force Parliament to have to come back soon, because they're going to need to pass some laws to get paid, come up with all this money and various other things that they've done. So Parliament will be back before too long. It's just what sort of shape or form it is in, and I think it's absolutely critical at a time when massive decisions have been made that will affect New Zealanders for a very long period of time, that we have full accountability. And some basic processes so that the opposition can function, that the press can do its job effectively, and that's really critical.
Thank you so much for taking your time to join us on what would have been a very busy day and a busy couple of weeks, I'm sure. National Party spokesman for finance, that's Paul Goldsmith. Now, if you've just joined us and you'd like to catch up on Sarah's Country on demand, you can head to Sarah's Country on podcast, as well as Sarah Perium and Farmers Weekly on YouTube, and all the details, of course, on farmersweekly.co.nz. After we come back after the break, I'll head to this poll to see what you think of the current government are doing a good job balancing public health as well as the economy. Next on Sarah's Country, we're going to talk about the looming essential freshwater reform with Mike Petersen, after this great new initiative launched yesterday from Wayne Langford, you saw before, and many others, called Meet the Need, and we'll be talking more about that on tomorrow night's show. This is Sarah's Country.
Every morning, Kiwi farmers wake up to produce high quality food. Yet, every night, some Kiwi families are going to sleep hungry. Meet the Need is a charity founded by farmers, and it's here to change all that. We're about New Zealand farmers feeding New Zealand families by donating a small part of what we grow when we can. You can help us make sure no one in New Zealand goes to sleep hungry again. Visit meettheneed.org and follow us on social.
Even when everything changes, some things will always stay the same. The cows still need milking, the economy still needs dairy, and dairy farmers will always have what it takes. Whatever you need to keep milking, our job during the lockdown is to get it to you, because we know what it takes.
Aotearoa New Zealand has always been a land that has provided for its people, a land of abundance and opportunity. Our dedicated team at Agri-Research know that embracing kaitiakitanga will see this continue for future generations. The work we do is transforming the way we farm, and revolutionising the way New Zealanders care for our animals and for our land. We work hard to create the world's most desirable food and bio-based products through smart, sustainable farming, led by some of the world's most phenomenal research and informed by the consumers who benefit from this passion. Through a focus on environmental sustainability and climate change initiatives, this passion will allow our work to continue for generations to come. Our proficiencies in research run wide, from seeds to pest control, high-value food production to practical farming systems and quality assurance. From the smallest rural land use project to international research programs, our science and technology innovations drive the prosperity of our precious agricultural sector. It's through this research that New Zealand retains its position as a scientifically advanced global agricultural leader. Our commitment to the growth of our wider New Zealand economy, its people, and the kaitiakitanga of Aotearoa is at the very heart of every scientific innovation and creation we deliver. Ag Research, firmly grounded in this land, these waters, looking to what's in the stars and the future. Ata Matai, Matai Whetu.
Now, I'm just checking out the comments here. Very sweet of you, Frank. He said we should have something like this program in the Netherlands. So we really have created a global audience here on Sarah's Country, thanks to the good team at Farmers Weekly. Now, looking at that poll, 71% of you still out there think the government is doing a good job when it comes to balancing both public health and the economy. And of course, we're talking about bad habits that we've developed over lockdown. I want to hear what they are in the comments. And of course, our next guest, I'm sure, is a very well-behaved young man that will not have taken on any bad habits, is very disciplined, of course. Now, the government's essential freshwater reforms have been temporarily stalled by COVID-19, with Environment Minister David Parker saying dealing with the crisis necessitates the reconsideration of priorities and timing. That aside, Food and Fibre Leaders Forum facilitator, as I described, WIP, Mike Petersen, says the government is receptive to working in partnership with the sector. And he joins us now to discuss more on what is page 3 in today's Farmers Weekly. Evening, Mike.
Good evening, Sarah. How are you?
And now I hope you take all compliment in the description as WIP in this Leaders Forum, because it's a job I know that you can bring both your compassion and capability to manoeuvre negotiations, which you have in the past.
Well, I think so, Sarah, but I think it's important to recognise that the Food and Fibre Leaders Forum is made up of all of the industry organisations right across the livestock, horticulture, Māori economy and others. And these organisations have come together because they do want to make sure that they align their views and thinking and then go to the government and talk about these big issues like essential fresh water with an industry voice. And it's been great leadership by all of those involved.
So to give an idea, basically the government wanted to have a consistent voice across the sector rather than individually dealing with these industry organisations? Or was that of leadership from the sector first?
No, there was leadership from the sector first. The sector decided that it was far better for them to have their disagreements in the back rooms and then go to the government with some policy that they broadly agree on. And the essential freshwater reforms are a very important piece of work, and I don't speak for the sector. Each of the members do that for themselves. But what the members have said is that they are looking for policy certainty, but it has to be the right policy. And that's why the offer and engagement has gone on between the sector and the government to make sure the policy is right for the time and is right and enduring for the sector.
Now, of course, fighting over water is not something that has sort of just come about. This has been going on for quite some time. So I ask on behalf of the sector, where are we at?
Well, I think the sector is looking for policy certainty, and the uncertainty has been around for far too long. And so the sector leaders are saying that we do want to complete these reforms, whether that happens before the election or after the election. No one's too sure at the moment, particularly with COVID-19. But they are saying that they do want to work with the government, they want to work with the regional sector, they want to work with the Māori economy to look at how we can get some certainty, which would be in the best interest of all concerned.
Do you believe that it's in the best interest politically for anything to be taken off to the table until after the election?
Well, that's a question that we really need guidance from the government on. And so the industry leaders are saying, look, they would like policy certainty and they would prefer that before the election. But they've been very clear in saying that it has to be the right policy. And we still think that there is some work to do on the current proposals. The direction of travel is clear and the sector's absolutely committed to improving water quality and to doing their part. There's no question about that. But they do want to make sure the policy is right for the sector and right for New Zealand.
We've talked previously to CEO for Irrigation New Zealand, Elizabeth Soul, and her progressions on an idea around a water commission. Do you believe that it is time we take water off the political table? Especially, I just don't want to be a journalist again through another election of a water beat up. To be honest, Mike, either.
No, and I think you're right. There's a lot of merit in actually getting water off the political agenda because it spreads not just from the water issue, it spreads onto all sorts of criticisms around farming practices. And, you know, the agricultural, horticultural sector in New Zealand recognises it has a huge responsibility and a huge opportunity to get a positive message out there right now about how they can be good for New Zealand and good for New Zealand's reputation in the world. So that's why the Food and Fibre Leaders Forum has come together, is to try and get that messaging better and to engage more fully, and it seems to be working.
Now, Mike, we've been talking about bad habits over lockdown, and you would have heard me say such nice things about you that you wouldn't dare develop any bad habits at Te Puna there. But has there been any that's popped up that you thought, no one will really know?
Oh, look, I have to say, about 3 days ago, I finally gave up hot cross buns, you know, so they were a nasty temptation. And look, I have to say, we have had to console ourselves with a drink every now and then. So, but we've made a bit of fun too, and I think that's the important thing. We're very fortunate, of course, being on the farm, that we have space and room to do our normal work, and we don't take that lightly. So it's a huge responsibility, producing food for the nation. But we've had some fun along the way. Yeah,
when Harris told me, you know how tight he is, he's been rationing out his Pinot across the way. Hey, when I was Googling, you know, I've got to come up with these photos for the designers to put into them. I found an image and I thought, no, that's not Mike. Have you seen the other Mike Petersen? Mike?
No, look, I haven't. And no, it's not something I do, going around Googling my name every now and then. So look, Sarah, I understand that this Mike Petersen is a pretty fit-looking guy. Is that true or not?
I've understood from my sources from Joel that he's a bit of an Australian wrestler. I haven't found out if he's any good, but I don't think he's been eating hot cross buns lately by that physique.
No, there we go. I'll pass on that one, Sarah. I'll stick to the farmer from Waipara instead.
Thank you so much for joining us. This is Mike Petersen. Now, coming up after the break, we get advice from Head of Global Agribusiness, Ian Proudfoot, on how we will adapt quickly as an industry to make the most of the changing world. But before that, we were sent in these dairy farmers in the Haraki saw a changing world with rain this weekend. Let's see the Vandervins doing the ultimate family rain dance, of course with Dad Bart's special show complete with, as you said, hashtag you can thank me later. This is Sarah's Country. What is it doing?
Whoa! Must be raining! Woo! All right! Woo! Woo! Oh. We love being farmers today, people. Awesome! I hope everyone's getting it. Woohoo!
Dear New Zealand, We know things are really tough out there right now.
People are concerned about their health and the health of their loved ones.
People are worried about the economy and when will things get back to normal.
Believe me when I say, us farmers are feeling it too. But now's no time to panic.
Our country can get through this together.
We just need to follow instructions and stay home.
Inside our bubble.
Let's flatten this curve and stop this disease spreading.
Together!
You don't need to worry about supermarkets getting low on food. There's plenty to go around for
everyone!
All the countries that could run out of food, New Zealand is not one of them.
Our farmers are world leading.
And we're damn good at what we do, producing high quality food.
We have strong supply lines.
And we're all working hard to keep food on the table.
For your family and for ours. New Zealand dairy farmers produce enough for 100 million people.
You're in good hands, New Zealand.
You can count on us to keep calm and carry on farming.
We're trusting you to stay at home to keep our country safe.
We are following the rules too.
We can do this!
We're all in this together.
Cheers, New Zealand.
Delicious. Ever wondered where it starts? Does it start with care? Respect. Fresh grass 365 days a year. The truth is, delicious doesn't start in a single moment or with a single ingredient. Delicious starts here.
Thank you so much for taking the time to join us tonight on Sarah's Country, of course, live across 10 plus platforms and made available on demand. So first thing in the morning, you can listen to us on podcast to take us wherever you are in the world at the moment. Comments, the poll tonight, do you think the government is balancing public health well with our economy? Strongly, way under that 70% that yes, they are. So that's good, going into obviously the decision to extend level 4 today through to Tuesday, and then who knows for how long or what's going to happen with alert level 3. It takes about 21 days to cement a habit, and of course, as we've been discussing our bad habits tonight that we've found under lockdown, there's a lot of changing consumer behaviour and culture shifts that will have, of course, cemented over lockdown. You know, the trend of things like nude food with minimal packaging on our food was quite trendy 3 months ago. But now, of course, without packaging and our consumers feeling quite reserved around things like food safety, is it coming at the expense of the environment? Our next guest believes we should stay the course on environmental issues like greenhouse gas mitigation, improving freshwater quality, to be outstanding in the world and the new world. So Ian Proudfoot joins us now. Ian, thank you for joining us. Ian, can you hear me? He's frozen, Joel.
I will get on that.
Okay. So Ian has put together his key messages as a little bit of a taster of more to come. If you follow closely KPMG's annual agenda, as we lead into that, which will be, of course, timely normally in June, tied in normally with field days. So this week he was a part of Agri-Tech New Zealand's webinar series and outlined a lot of what the new normal will look like post-COVID-19. And there's quite a lot of great insights that Ian has put forward. It's just more thought-provoking topics, and of course that's on today's front page of Farmers Weekly. And we're hoping to be able to get Ian back on the line. He was just talking to me just before and then he froze. How are we looking, Joel?
I'm just going to go through to an ad for a second and we'll be right back.
Fantastic. This is Sarah's Country.
Growing a better world takes courage. It takes foresight and vision. It's about dreaming big, then being brave enough to follow that dream through. To create a world where food is plentiful, soils are healthy, and rivers run crystal clear. A world where we grow more with less, where livestock is tended to with care. Energy is friend, not foe, and waste is a valuable resource. This is the world you're already shaping through imagination, innovation, and determination. So as small steps become huge leaps, you move boldly forward. And Rabobank is there beside you to help grow a better world together.
Okay, my old mate Joel, the producer, is just going to step out and try and get Ian Proudfoot on the phone. And, like any good broadcaster, we have the ability to fill time. I've just looking at the comments here, had a bit of an LOL moment, as you say, to Tony Watson's comment. Hey, Sarah, nude food. Surely you aren't referring to Bart. Well, Bart did have quite a nice little tush there, Tony, but no, I wasn't referring specifically to Bart. Now, Bart, if you've just joined us, has done the ultimate rain dance, which has gone viral on Twitter, up in the Haraki, as himself and his children were welcoming the much-needed rain in the Waikato. But I was actually just thinking, Tony, the amount of mothers around the country that will be changing their tune to their daughters, saying, make sure you marry a man in an essential service. That will become quite part of our culture moving forward, as, this could be a long time to come. And, of course, food security, in other ways, is quite important. Look, now I just really want to hear about these bad habits. I reckon you're all a bit shy because you don't want to admit to it in public, because then if it's in the Facebook Live comments, you're obviously, it's put down there. So tell me then, what is one of the good habits that you've picked up? Good habits could be anything from fitness to spending more time connecting with old friends that you haven't seen for a while, or got better at one of your hobbies that you've been practicing around the country. I would love to hear what good habits that you have. I can see both here on my Facebook page and, of course, the Farmers Weekly Facebook page, the comments pouring in. And of course, our poll tonight, we were saying, do you think that the government is doing a good job of balancing public health and the economy? I'm in two minds, to be fair. I worry quite a lot. I think at a really macro level a lot. And the public health crisis of a wrecked economy, in my mind, is unbearable to think about from a mental health perspective. To see Tony Watson's here watching, the stress in a lot of jobs that can cause a lot of in-place work accidents, through to just absolutely rising levels of poverty. So I'm sorry, it's not that pretty, but I mean, look, at what point do we balance what's going on here? And sure, we can be world leaders in everything from sailing to rugby to nuclear free. I mean, New Zealand just loves being world leaders in everything, don't they? But do we want to be world leaders in our economic recovery? I'd like to think so. So let's start to put some things in place. I think we've got Ian back on the line. Ian Proudfoot, Head of Global Agribusiness for KPMG. Are you there, sir?
I am, yeah. Remuera's coverage is not that great.
Whereabouts are you calling us from, just so we get a bit of a picture?
Remuera Road.
Oh, okay. So what's up with the internet in Remuera?
I don't know. We live in a black spot, according to Spock.
Yes, sure. No, completely understand. That's okay. We'll let you away with it. So as I was saying, Ian, as you just blacked out on us a little bit there, can you please outline your key messages from last week's AgriTech NZ webinar?
Yes, so I suppose what we were saying is, the reality is we're looking at a food system where we've got a load of customers around the world whose circumstances have fundamentally changed. They've either had to come to terms with thinking about the world through a very different lens, having sat in isolation for a number of months or weeks, or they're thinking about a system that's evolving in terms of the safety of the food they're thinking about, or how they interact with other people in society. So, and a lot of them have significantly less wealth. So I suppose what we're saying to food producers in New Zealand is think very carefully about how you're going to sell your products to your customers in future, because probably what those customers want is quite different to what they might have wanted 6 weeks ago.
We were talking earlier about food protectionism. I didn't actually get a chance to ask Mike Petersen about that from his previous role, but there's the rise in buy local and of course patch protection from, of course, our very established trade deals. How are we positioned to make sure that people still want to choose New Zealand when the patriotism rises so strongly in their own domestic markets to buy local?
I think there's no question that trend towards localization is going to ramp up. The protectionism is going to become more and more significant. So where I'm sitting at the moment, New Zealand needs to be closer to our customers than ever. However, we've got to come to terms of how do we get close to customers when for the next 18 months, we're going nowhere. We're stuck in this country, unable to travel. So we need the government, who already has physical positions around the world, to really lift the game in terms of how it sells New Zealand to customers. We've got to think about how we deploy technology and create immersive experiences for people so they can experience New Zealand without coming here, which is likely to be the case for the next 2 years, and ramp up how we tell our story. So that does bring us back to how good we are on the environment. That becomes really, really important if we're going to differentiate ourselves.
One thing that we don't talk a lot about, we talk a lot about our unique environment here in New Zealand, but it's the health benefits of our products, and in particular, as the global consumer is going to want to seek products that can boost their immunity, we're not telling that health story well enough, do you think?
I think we've got to invest a lot more in it. We only sell about one product around the world which has got clearly proven health benefits, and that's the green kiwi fruit. Everything else, we've done some work, but we haven't done all the work to be able to tell a true health story. You think about a consumer now sitting anywhere around the world, they're thinking, how do I boost my immunity? I don't want that contagion. I want to keep myself and my family healthy. They're going to pay a premium for products that say, we can help you not just combat COVID-19, but combat any disease that could leave your family at risk. So I think we're going to see quite a shift towards people making conscious health decisions, and immunity boosting is probably going to be close to the top of the list for many consumers.
I'd have to argue there is a lot of proven venison benefits, velvet, manuka, honey, lamb. There is quite a lot as well to add to that.
Yeah, but those products have done some of the work, but actually, getting the tick from the John Hopkins or the credible international universities that costs a lot of money, there's not many that have yet jumped over all those hurdles in every possible language in every possible country. And that's what we need to do now really quickly.
Hey, just to ramp up before we go across to our next guest, this ties in very nicely. You were saying in your presentation that border controls constrain, of course, immigration, and we have to learn how to adapt with our seasonal labour supplies as well.
Yeah, so I think the RSE system is going to be very challenging for the next 1 or 2 years. We're not going to have the influx of students that have come into work as fruit pickers or pick the grapes. So, I think that's going to drive us down the track towards automation and drive us a lot quicker than we were moving there. Plus, we've got to work out how we deploy all these New Zealanders that have lost jobs and give them great opportunities so they become part of our world-leading primary sector. And, that this primary sector drives the economy forward. It is our one track that we've got to recovery in this country quickly.
Thank you so much for taking the time to join us, Ian Proudfoot, the head of Global Agribusiness at KPMG. And as we're saying to close the show, we understand that it's not as easy to redistribute the unemployed Burger King workers behind the wheel of a tractor. And of course, Ag Staff's Matt Jones is going to join us after the break to discuss what's going on to help out to shift our labour force. This is Sarah's Country.
The easiest way, I think, for people, particularly farmers, to relate to stress is it's a very physical thing. So we have stress hormones in our body. They're activated on a daily basis. They get us out of bed, get us down to the yards to kind of get the job done. But the difficulty comes, I guess, when hormones, or that arousal level, that's what we refer to it as, you're pumping up your arousal level, that if that goes on for too long without a break, then that's pretty hard for the body to sustain.
I like that busy time, and I like getting up and knowing what I've got to do, and it's just how long I can do that. I think I've found previously when I stopped and say we had a week off, I wasn't much fun to be away for that week off. I sort of sat there and I was pretty tired and pretty exhausted.
One of the first things you learn when you live out here
is where to shop for the things you need to live out here.
like electric fencing,
or horse feed,
or bee suits,
children, chook food.
Do you want a couple of these?
Or something stylish to wear. Not everyone's got stuff like this.
But at Farmlands we do, and then some.
So if you need anything to help you farm,
grow,
milk, drench,
rear, come on in.
Because we're out here too.
Now, as we look to get Matt Jones on the line, of course, I want to be able to see who's online with me. So being able to give a bit of a wave or an emoji just to see who's there. I do really enjoy seeing a lot. Matt is waving because he can hear me potentially. So it's good to see quite a few of you turning up every night, Monday through Thursday, 7 o'clock, of course, live on Farmers Weekly's website, farmersweekly.co.nz, and Sarah Perium's Facebook page and YouTube channel as well. So really enjoying the growth of this. We're seeing a lot of people start to discover and share it with their friends, as well as tell us that they enjoy listening to the individual interviews that they may have missed the next day, which of course you can get Sarah's Country on podcast. So as we start to ramp into, I think it's week 4, I'm really losing it. But yeah, no, it must have been because I think it was the first week of the lockdown. We have certainly been able to take on board a lot of your suggestions in terms of guests that you want to have on the show. So please send me an email, sarah@sarahperium.com, to be able to recommend either yourself or somebody that you'd like me to invite onto the show and ask them what is going on. In terms of what's going on, I think we got Matt Jones back on. Can you hear me, sir? No, can you hear me, Matt? He's got a lovely looking tidy office there. He can hear me and I can't hear him, Joel. Oh, good. I'm really looking forward to talking to Matt because, as of course in this week's Farmers Weekly titled "Want a Job, We've Got It," Matt is the Ag Staff Director and saying there is hundreds of jobs in the primary sector. Very much underpinned by the fact that there's hundreds and hundreds of international seasonal workers that have obviously rushed home before their borders have been shut. Here in New Zealand, for those listening and watching around the world, we attract a lot of Pacific Islanders here to pick our fruit, a lot of Filipinos on our dairy farms, and of course a lot of the Irish and English come here to do our seasonal tractor and contracting. So they are hugely, and that's among many, many others in terms of backpackers and all sorts. Saw a real swing in terms of 90% of kiwi fruit this year was picked by New Zealanders. So it just really shows you the change in time that we've had. And of course, as we were just talking there from with Ian Proudfoot, we do have to learn to adapt to a new world without seasonal workers for a while. But I'm really looking forward to talking to Matt. When I had a pre bit of a yarn to him as I asked him to come on the show, he's not only of course got a recruitment company, but he facilitates an agricultural training program near Ashburton. So he's been heavily involved in all facets of recruitment and understands it's not that simple, as I said, to get these Burger King workers to go and sit behind what is not a low-skilled job, driving a tractor these days. It's extremely high-skilled, and there's a lot of expensive machinery that they'll be looking after. That's just one of the many jobs that's out there. Now, do we have Matt? Can we just chuck him on the phone, Joel? That would be fantastic. I would love everybody to see his beautiful face. No, thank you so much, Joel, for taking the time to try and get Matt on the video with us tonight. Of course, there's always something a bit tricky. And you know what? It's not just rural broadband, as we found out there before with Ian Proudfoot in Remuera, failing to have connection with us. So, of course, we can trust the old, well, it's not really the copper, the landline. No, who has a landline anymore? Really? Do you have a landline, Matt? I bet you still got a fax machine. Can you hear me, Matt? Can you hear me, Matt? Now, we are going to get Matt on the phone, but I just want you to play a short little video, Joel, if you've got it there, from Global HQ. Yeah. This is Sarah's Country. Yes, well, we're finally there. We have Matt Jones on the line, and if you're just watching, we're just setting up. Matt Jones is the Ag Staff Managing Director. Now, we have had our own notice of direction today from Jacinda. So, please, stay home, eat more hot cross buns. Our economy has had a major defibrillator to its heart with the lines showing signs of the 80s. And I worry that the young unemployed, as their PlayStations and there's their hangovers from their Zoom parties wears off, there is a hell of a shock about to set in. And of course, it isn't our young unemployed, it is our way unexpected unemployed. And as Tony Watson points out here, it's not the ex-Burger King, it's the ex-Air New Zealand pilot. However, we have always had a labour shortage in the primary sector, and I can't understand what's going on as it continues. So we welcome now, via phone, Matt Jones.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you, Matt. Now, Matt's employment business recruits staff for jobs, as we said, across the farm and agricultural contracting season. And I want to ask you, Matt, after, of course, you spoke to Annette Scott from Farmers Weekly this week in an article, that you've been struggling big time to find staff. Can you paint us all a picture of what's going on?
Well, we've been struggling for 20 years to find people in the primary sector, as you said, Sarah. It's not something new. We started in business in Ashburton. Unemployment rate's been sort of under 1% there all this time. And it's getting worse, and it's going to get worse. We don't have the backpackers around New Zealand. a lot have gone home. We can't bring international staff that we normally do at this time of year. So we need Kiwis. And, the opportunities are there if people want to come and grab them.
I understand that there is quite a large dairy recruitment campaign planned. Should we have been doing this, though, a long time ago, Matt? Or were we not aggressive enough to explain that, and we just relied on what was easier, international staff?
No, yeah, I hear you. But no, look, we've been trying to get Kiwis. So we specialised a dairy company 8 years ago called New Zealand Dairy Careers that transitions, recruits, and a lot of pastoral care around people getting into the industry. There's still 40% churn in the dairy industry, and we're going out to really change that. But people need to experience it first and not make a knee-jerk reaction, particularly into that industry. We've had people try to get into that industry that have never had an animal or a pet in their life. Now, if you don't like animals, it's not the right industry for you. You pick your jobs and where you want to go. But it's the primary sector is, and the opportunities are vast. And one thing about it is they're not going to go away. For the last 10, 20 years, governments have been pouring money into tourism, overseas education with hospitality management. And the primary sector, it's here now and it'll always be here. These jobs won't go away.
If you're satisfied.
Now, absolutely right, and you're totally right in terms of it certainly is a different place in the dairy industry, particularly as it was maybe even a decade ago, and it certainly has changed. I know that certainly from some of my friends. Now, with regards to the next short term, what is in the next, say, 6 months, some of those crunch points that are coming on, that we've obviously got out of some of the seasons though. So what is the big thing that you're worrying about down the track?
Goodbye.
Well, the short-term immediate ones is really hands-on work in food and factory and harvest production. There's a lot of that goes on at this time of year. We need a lot of people there. But as we go forward, this quality control people, there's the vast, the range is huge. We see 6 months ago to try and help and facilitate and bring more Kiwis into the industry, and we've had a great uptake. But the opportunity is there for more Kiwis to get in and join the sector.
Are you getting much cut through with regards to mainstream media coverage of this problem, Matt? Do you think that as a wider New Zealand economy, we're ready to hear the fact that there's jobs, but we just have to get our hands dirty?
Absolutely. We do. And we need to talk about it more and just get in front of people and explain that they don't actually have to get their hands dirty. It's not all about getting your hands dirty either. There's certainly there is a lot of those jobs, but it's not all about that.
No, you're absolutely right. That's totally one perspective, and I must apologise for being so straight on that. What methods would you like the industry? No, and speaking of one, what methods would you like the industry? And of course, we can't always rely on government for everything, Matt. To be able to collaborate together, that word that we say a lot but don't do a lot of, to come together around a common problem?
Well, we've got to start with the government, and the government's got to help us in training. We've got to start training, and we've got to train people for the sector. There's no point people getting into a whole new sector or a whole new job to set themselves up to fail, and employers in the sector don't want that. So we've got to train them. We've got to educate them and get them in the right mindset. And then as a group, as an industry, we need to join together and ensure we've got lots of jobs for these guys out the other end. And they're out there. The opportunities are there.
Absolutely. And time to start to reclassify some of those jobs. I remember doing interviews a couple of years ago that we classify things like tractor driving as low skilled. It's most certainly not. And as you just said before, there's a lot of opportunities that we don't understand are out there.
Yeah, look, guys can be operating machinery worth hundreds of thousands of dollars that have got more computer technology in them than the average.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Matt, what would be wanting your parting words to employers that are really struggling for staff and are worried on some of the proactive things that they can do?
What can employers do? They need to be seen as an employer of choice. Come up with the good reasons why somebody would want to come and work for you. Being from a shortage area and always being there, we've sort of learned that over the years. Why would somebody come and work for you? So you've got to get your ducks in a row and sell yourself to an employee in the best possible light that you can.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally great advice. And sorry about the sort of patchy line that we had there, of course, with Matt. But I'm glad that we finally were able to have him tonight on Sarah's Country. I really appreciate your time, Matt, and your patience there. Now, Matt's absolutely right. I've just recently completed an article which will be coming out in Latitude magazine focusing on the Canterbury Farm Balance and Environment Award winners from Dunsandel, Tony Coltman and Dana Carver, and they wanted to talk more about what they did for staff wellbeing than they wanted to talk about their bottom line. So I really do believe we are shifting our attitudes as employers, and as Matt was saying there, to be able to sell ourselves not only as employers but as an industry that has evolved and changed and is very, very different. So make sure at every opportunity you get to tell people, how great it is to work in this essential service. That's all we have time for tonight. If you've missed any of the previous shows, you'll be able to catch them on demand on Sarah's Country on podcasts, as well as on the Farmers Weekly YouTube channel as well. Of course, want your suggestions, send in them to me, Sarah at sarahpurium.com. So I say to you tonight, good night, go well, and have a night staying away from the pantry. This is Sarah's Country.